now I'm going to show you how to do some inserts and some queries. So the first thing we want to do is let's connect to the database first, because we can't do anything until we connect. Once we connect to the database, then we'll start actually adding stuff to the student collection, and then we'll see if we can retrieve it. Basic stuff. So what we do is we'll run connect, the function that we created. And remember, connect is just calling mongoose.connect, which returns a promise. So we should be able to just say .then, and that'll give us a connection. We probably won't need this connection, but we'll just reference it here. Cool, so now that we're connected to the database, and just to be safe, we'll just catch it and log it if something happens. All right, so once we're in the scope of the database being connected and we're good to go, we can start actually writing operations against the database. So using the student model, what I want to do is I just want to create one student. So there's a lot of ways you can do that in Mongoose, but the preferred way is just to use the create method on the actual model. So I can make a new student here by saying student equals, and I'm going to await this. Well, I'm just going to return a promise. You know what? I'm going to use async await, actually. It's just better. So I'm going to await this, and I'm going to say await student dot create. So by using student.create, all I have to do is pass in an object that fulfills the schema that I created above. And the schema above only has a first name whose type is string. There's no validations. There's nothing else. So if I pass in an object that fulfills that schema, then I should get back a new student. Well, if we look at our schema, there's no validations. There's nothing. I could actually just pass in an empty object, and this would actually create a student. It would have nothing on it other than an ID, because when you create documents, IDs are generated. But other than that, there's nothing else on it. And that's kind of where you can see the flexibility of Mongo. So, but I'm just going to go ahead and pass in a first name of Tim. Cool. And then we'll just log this. So now I connect to the database. I'm going to create my first student, and then I'm just going to log it. So now in order to run this, we need to check for one thing. One, we need to make sure our server is actually running, our Mongo server. The MongoDB instance itself needs to be running. For me, because I installed with Brew, I actually use this pretty cool thing. If you have Brew installed, I use something called Launch Rocket. And Launch Rocket, what it does is it scans your plist file in Brew, and it shows you all the services that you have, and then you can just start them with a GUI like this. So I don't have to use a terminal to go and start and stop Mongo. I just use this GUI, and it does it for me. But this only works if you install it with Brew. If you didn't install it with Brew, it's still the same thing. You would just have to go in the terminal and run the same command that we had to run before, which is just going to be MongoD. And for me, it's not going to run because it's already started. I'm already running it, so it's not going to execute it. If you're not running it, this should just hang, and you should be running MongoD. So make sure your Mongo server is started by running MongoD. Once that's good, then we can just execute this file with just basic node. So I don't know what you named the file on your machine, but for me, I just called it test.js. So I'm just going to execute this file, which is just, for me, this is going to be node test.js. And you can see, like I said, you'll get some deprecation warnings because of what's happening with Mongoose and Mongo right now. So you can kind of ignore them for now because they're not going to kill your app. But what actually happened here is there is my student. It was created, and I logged it out. So let's look at this object and kind of just like dissect it a little bit.